So there's a popular question going around Twitter lately about your top tips for people who are making their first game. And I'm going to answer this as a video with 3 simple answers to the question. I'm answering the video partly because my first tip is maybe you don't follow tips that fit inside of a tweet. A thread of interesting truth or utility in there, but that's where we get to our second tip, which is that most advice that's going to be worth following is going to depend on having first been listened to, because it's going to depend a lot on your context, your goals, your personal differences. This is something where when I'm working with people on home team, which again, like my profession now for many years is helping people make their first games, is that it depends on, are they in it short term because they just want to try it out, which that's fine. That's not a bad thing. Are they in it long term in terms of they want to do this for many years and they want a longer, stronger kind of foundation to build on for that? Is there just a certain mechanic that they want to try, they want to see to come to fruition? It's going to be a very different answer than they want a long, for example, aiming for a career in it. It's a different set of ways to supplement and build up your skills. And even from the beginning, there's some different things you might do to point yourself in one direction than another. This depends a great deal on, as well as someone's, how much time they can put into it, their sort of ability to bounce back from a morale hit. So for example, out of the different advice you'd see in there, some people are suggesting, well, take on, smallest project you can. Some people don't find that exciting enough. Some people are saying you've got to take on the thing that inspires you. And then other people are saying, well, you may not finish that. That might be discouraging. And again, this becomes a personal read. It's part of where the conversations that I have with people who are in home team getting their foundations are trying to feel out, based on other examples and cases I've seen, are they going to be able to recover from the morale hit that comes from going beyond their reach and what they can do in a given amount of time? And the answer for some people is sure. The answer for others is not as much. But it results in a great deal of survivorship bias in who's out there giving the advice, because whatever they did worked for them. They survived the failing to do something big enough, or they recovered from trying something too big or too small, etc. And this is where then the third bit of advice is to basically be cautious of advice that's coming from people who are not in a role where their focus is on being responsible and accountable for the advice that they give. In a very broad sense, what I mean here is that if someone's only sample set, data set, examples to draw from is what worked for them personally, and they have not seen through examples of others that are clearly a result of having followed their advice as they give it, it's guesswork, it's speculation. It's built on the assumption that your situation is identical to theirs, which is never the case, because time changes, situations change. You've got a different amount of security, foundation, backup plans, context, social connections, circumstances, and time, place, mediums being invented, all that kind of stuff. It's also a matter of they are kind of guessing in the same kind of way, right? You see this happen all the time from the masterclass courses or so on. If it's someone who, they might be good at the craft, they might be accomplished at the craft, but they've never really been a teacher of it. Often they're offering kind of guesses at, athletes will say, I woke up early and I worked hard. And it's true, they did. And developers will say, well, I just did what came naturally to me and whatever I felt like. And that's true. That is what that person did. And there's a Venn diagram of what was a profitable or successful, well-received, or even within scope of beginner, and what happened to be for them personally, what they felt like doing. And again, you get a survivorship bias issue of a lot of people who, what they first felt like doing didn't maybe fit in either of those overlaps. And so you don't hear those same stories from them making the same guesses. They don't wind up kind of on that stage giving that same talk about do what comes naturally, do whatever you want, and so on. At 3 high level, just to revisit those points kind of more succinctly. The first is to maybe be cautious of advice that fits in a tweet. There's lots of always assumptions embedded in there. They necessarily aren't listening first to where you're coming from, what you want out of it. So that's tip 1, cautious of very short form advice. At the very least, grain of salt it. And that's hopefully by now you've got a sense for that in YouTube comments and tweets and so on. Secondarily, it is the matter of making sure that you are accounting for your personal differences, your unique goals, your unique aims, that you've laid out a sense of what's your background, what's your future, what's your aim, knowing full well your plans might adjust and change. Until you've tried something, you kind of don't know, and that's okay. I know that sometimes when we're starting out, we just want to try to do anything to get some momentum, but even still, it kind of depends. You're going to do some different things. If you're 13, if you're 20, if you're 40, there might be some different things available to you, might be some different options. Again, if you've got a lot of time, little time. If you can know from the start that your emphasis is on making a certain kind of game that you want to get out of you to make your game your way, that's a very different path in life than I'm trying to speed run my way towards finding a paying gig doing something related to game industry. There's a lot of things in between. depending on someone's priority is winning awards or getting players or reaching a certain age range or otherwise. Different answers to these kind of questions, as well as the kind of games you like to play, the kind of games you're interested in. There's different pathways and tools and pipelines, all that kind of stuff suggested. So again, second point is just it depends on you. And if it's not accounting for your personal circumstances, background, and goals, well, again, grain of salt it. And then the third point just being that, again, it is something where there's lots of advice going around from well-meaning, kind, sensible people. And I'm not saying that they're trying to mislead anybody, that they're necessarily wrong in every case, but that it is built on two assumptions. The first of which is that it's built on the incorrect assumption that your circumstances and goals and personality traits and so on are identical to theirs, that your interests happen to align to the same that theirs are and were when they started, which is often a separation in time. And that secondarily, it is built on the idea that they can tell from having succeeded at it what was the ingredient, what was the thought, what was the strategy. And many times you start drilling in more and kind of talking to, and this is what I do right with the podcast. I talk to probably 100 developers by now for that podcast, 200 total throughout my career for different interviews for different platforms and companies and things. Quite often the advice that they're giving is actually not what they did early on. It's a reaction to what they did. What they did isn't even what they're telling other people to do. And so it becomes useful to drill in and figure out, okay, what did you actually do? Under what circumstances is this advice applicable? But it's a deeper dive than just what you think works. I mean, what makes a great basketball coach is not the same as what makes a great basketball player. Makes a good boxing coach, not the same as what makes a good boxer. If you had a choice between would you want to be taught by who taught those people or taught by those people themselves, it can feel like we're drawn to hear from the celebrity, the one who achieved, but they've got a very different lens, perspective, and attitude than someone whose actual role is helping those people get where they go. It's a different kind of role to help train somebody up and answer their questions and things, which again is what I do, and that's why I care so much about the specifics of this question, rather than just kind of slapdashing an answer out there, figuring that, well, off the top of my head, here's a guess. There be dragons. Caution around that. Anyway, that's enough for the day. These are discussions I have all the time with people in Home Team, and I get questions sometimes in replies of like, hey, will you be my mentor? Will you teach me stuff? And the answer is quite literally yes. I have a full structure for doing that. I've been doing that professionally and full-time for many years. All that information is at hometeamgamedev.com, including the sponsorship program, if that's what someone needs. If you want my help and things, that's how to navigate getting access to that. That's it for now. Catch you all day. Bye for now.